Welcome, welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Morning.
Okay, we go ahead and start to share. And this is where we were yesterday. All right, so as you know, we're in Noah, and we're talking about this covenant that God has made with humanity and all creatures, all living creatures on this planet. So remember, we left off with God saying he was going to make a sign for this covenant, and here we go. Et kashti natati be'anan. I have set my bow in the cloud. V'haita la'ot brit, and it shall be as a sign of the covenant. Beini uvein haaretz, between me and the land. So, and I don't see any Rashi on this. V'haya ba'anani anan al haaretz, and it shall be when I set up or create clouds form clouds over the earth. V'nir atah hakeshet be'anan, that and when the bow is seen in the cloud. So let's take a look here. There we are. Ba'anani anan, right? So there's this noun anan, and here is a verb of this noun, right? When I cloud clouds, keshet ale, so when it goes up, b'machshava, as a thought, lifanai, before me, lahavi choshech v'abadon le'olam. I think that's what this is. Okay, that this word is choshech. That would be darkness, if I'm pronouncing this word correctly. Avadon would be destruction. It could be, I guess, it could be chasach, right? Which could be, like something to be diminished, to have something diminution, maybe. So it could be that, but could be darkness and destruction to the world. And I think actually darkness might make more sense because we know that clouds can also bring darkness. So the Anani Anan, this unusual expression, is understood and interpreted to be the idea that these clouds are, when we talk about threatening clouds, they're threatening in a very serious kind of way. So let's keep going with this. Okay. V'zacharti et priti, I shall remember my covenant, asher beini uveinechem, which is between myself and you, uvein kol nefesh chaya b'chol basar, and between all living things, living animals, and all flesh. So I think again we're talking about creatures. V'lo yeh od hamayim, and no longer will the water be lemabul, as a flood, serve as a flood, l'shachet kol basar, in order to destroy all flesh. So we can see how this particular rainbow indicates that God needs to be reminded, and I think that's the force of it. In other words, there's no sense speaking about God needing a reminder, but on the other hand, if we're saying it like that, we're saying that human behavior has gone to such an extent that there needs to be some strengthening of this commitment, that I think the real comment is about human behavior, and that we're really, really undermining the very reason for our creation as human beings, and the extent to God's mercy and kindness to us. V'haita keshet ba'anan, and the bow will be in the cloud, or itiha, and I will see it, liskor brit olam, to remember this eternal covenant, bein Elohim, between God, uvein kol nefesh chayai, and between all living creatures, b'chol basar, with all flesh, literally, asher ala aretz, which is upon the land. So this is simply, I think, Bechol Basar refers to all living creatures, Kol Nefesh Chaya, all living souls. So that's the idea of souls. Perhaps the second expression being the actual physical body itself that's being referred to. But we really are talking about, um, I think, animals, insects, etc., as opposed to plant life. I think the distinction we're trying to make here. Let's take a look here. Is there a question? Okay, all right. So,
Uh,
yeah, go ahead. No? All right.
uh,
Harlan, did you have a question?
I was just wondering about the clouds that you say. There's
Yes.
different kinds of clouds.
Right.
Are the clouds just water? Is that what a cloud is?
Well, essentially it is. It's water vapor that is starting to become droplets of water that are turning into. But that's more of a scientific, way of looking at it here. Here we're talking about it, remember, from a spiritual and literary point of view. And the idea, of course, that we know that clouds can bring rain, and the idea of the rain and the flood, etc. So, yeah, I mean, how it actually happens scientifically is not what's being discussed here.
So
It's,
when that rainbow came,
yeah,
that was a warning that we will never have the flood again.
correct. It's that is the assurance, the way it's understood here. Correct. That
Hmm.
is the sign that a flood that will inundate and eradicate all life is not going to happen again. The issue is all life. The degree, of course, we know we have flooding. We do. There is flooding that takes place, and we know how
Hmm.
destructive flooding is, but not on the level of the flood that of Noah's time, where it was, you know, so rampant everywhere, the entire area there that was devastated by the flood waters. So, so the other little piece here is that we have this reference to God referring to himself as Elohim, as in the third person. And so Rashi picks that up and is sensitive to that. So he's going to comment on that. So you can see Bein Elohim uvein kol nefesh chayai, right between God and between all living things. So here he says, this is interesting, why the use of Elohim. And he says that there's a deeper message here as to why it doesn't say Beini, right? And he's gonna actually refer to that. So he says, Bein midat hadin shel mala, that is to say, between the quality of judgment shel mala on the higher level, in other words, divine or heavenly judgment uveinechem and you. Shehayala lichto, because it would have made more sense for it to state, Beini uvein kol nefesh chaya. It would have between myself and all the living creatures. And this idea of there being this divine quality of judgment, that there's one of the underlying themes of creation that we are ultimately accountable for our decisions and our lives, having been given freedom of choice. And so consequently, we now become accountable. As to the rest of creation and the other living things, they are understood, at least for the purposes of our responsibility as human beings and giving ourselves a sense of part of our significance is that the animals were essentially created ultimately for the purpose of humanity. So that's why if human beings aren't going to live anymore, human beings are going to be eradicated. The animals are going to be eradicated too. And this has, again, more to do with trying to give us a particular point of view regarding our own lives and the degree to which we're responsible. So the Torah is trying to let us know just how responsible we really are for lower levels of creation, that the reason they're there is really intending to help us and to serve us and to make our lives more livable and livable in every sense. So let me find out if there's anything else. Okay, so it goes on to say, we haven't finished the Rashi. Ella, however, zehu midrasho, okay, this is its midrashic understanding. In other words, saying that the reason it says Elohim is because the word Elohim has the connotation of the divine aspect of judgment. So he says this is the midrashic explanation. Keshe tavo midat hadin. Okay. Oh, sorry. Sorry. He says this is another level. This is another midrash. Keshe tavo midat hadin lekatreg aleichem. When the quality of judgment comes to prosecute you, right? Lechayev etchem, to show you to be guilty, right? Ani ro'et ha'ot haniskar. I shall see the sign that is mentioned. Forgive me. I misunderstood where it was going there before. So again, trying to explain why it's in the third person. It's not, and it's of course, uh, again, a very literary way of understanding it because our ultimate understanding is God's unity, right? And we are just dividing it up like this in order to try to make the point and to get a better understanding of what's going on. So. Vayomer Elohim el Noach, and God said to Noah, Zot ot habrit, this is the sign of the covenant, Asher hakimoti, which I have established, beini uvein kol basar, and with all and between all flesh, all life, Asher alaharetz, which is over the earth, which is on the earth. Okay. So let's go on here. Zot ot habrit, this is the sign of the covenant. So the fact that it uses the word zot is a this demonstrative pronoun, this, right? This or that. And very often it's understood to mean that ahu, that he showed him. In other words, when the word this goes along with pointing at something, right? So for example, when we say, when the Torah is lifted up after the reading, and we say V'zot HaTorah, and we point to the Torah, right? So here Ahu Hakeshet, he showed him. So that's what's the new piece of information going on here, is that he showed him the rainbow. For Amarlo, and he said to him, God said to Noah, Hare ha'ot shamarti, here it is, behold, right, the sign that I referred to, that I mentioned. So again, that it isn't just a sort of theoretical thing, but that God actually showed Noah this sign. And again, going back to that initial statement we mentioned the other day, and that is that Noah was very concerned about having to fulfill the commandment of being fruitful and multiply, because he was wondering if there was going to be another flood to simply destroy and wipe out humanity. And so he was very worried about that. And that's part of what's going on here, is that in order for him to feel more comfortable about procreation, God was um, reassuring him that this was not going to happen again. So, Vayiyu v'nei Noach. So we get onto a new idea now. Vayiyu v'nei Noach, and the sons of Noah, Hayotzim in HaTeva, who came out of the ark, Shem v'Cham v'Yafet, Shem, Ham, and Yafet, v'Cham hu avi Canaan, and Cham is the father of Canaan, right? So one of his children. Here we go. V'cham hu avi Canaan. So lama hu tzrach lomar kan? Why is this mentioned? I mean, we don't mention any other children of Ham, for one, and number two, we don't mention any children at all of Shem and Yefet. So why is this mentioned here? Lefi shehaparsha asuka uva'a bischaruto shel Noach, right? So because the parsha, this chapter, is going to busy itself, it's going to involve itself and come, and it should be shikru shel Noach. Then in the drunkenness of Noah, it's going to come up very soon. Shekilkel ba Cham, right? And Cham messed up. He tried to mess up Noah. He took advantage. Va'al yado nitkalel Canaan, and through this, Canaan was cursed. V'adayin lo katav, and he hadn't yet, the scripture hadn't yet mentioned, hadn't yet written, Toldot Cham, the children of Cham. So because Canaan is going to be coming up and mentioned in this story, it wants us to understand that Canaan is the descendant of Cham. V'lo yadanu sheknaan b'no, and we wouldn't have known that Canaan was Cham's son. Lefichach, and for this reason, hutzrach lomar kan, it was necessary to mention here, v'cham hu avich kan, that Cham was the father of Canaan. So it's in anticipation of this narrative that's going to come up in a second. So, Shlosha ele v'nei Noach, these three were the sons of Noah, ume'ele nafza kol haaretz, and from these, that is these three sons, the whole earth spread out. So, now we get into it. Vayachel Noach ish ha'adamah, and Noah, the man of the earth, began. Right, that's the word vayachel. But the word yachel, interestingly, has some other interpretations as well. And this particular word might have been chosen here to refer to the fact that we talk about lechalel, right, to profane, that this word is anticipating the fact that, in a sense, Noah is going to profane himself. Let's go on, the next page. Vayita Charin, and he planted a vineyard. So he was a man of the soil, right? Vayachel, right? Here we go. So we're going to see this. In Bereshit Rabbah, it's going to pick up on this word. Asa atzmo chulin. He made himself chulin. So chol as opposed to kadosh. So again, these are not necessarily easy words to translate, but kadosh means sanctified, chol means desanctified. So there really isn't an English word to be equivalent to this. We have to take sanctified and say desanctified. Shehayalo la'asok, because he really should have la'asot chila, b'nitiya acheret, that if he was going to do a planting, his first planting shouldn't have been a vineyard, right? It might have been wheat, it might have been some other kind of simply necessary vegetable or vegetation. But this was the first thing he did, was, in a sense, the pleasure that one gets from wine. So, of course, one could take a sort of tongue-in-cheek position and say, after having been stuck on that ark with all those animals and enduring the flood, what he needed was a stiff drink. But I will just say that in parentheses. So, Ish Adama, so the man of the earth, Adoni Ha'adamah, right? So in other words, let's take a look. Kamor. So he gives an example so that in the word Adon can also mean like Lord, Lord of the soil. Kamor, let's take a look in Ruth, first chapter of Ruth. Ish Ish Naomi, right? There it mentions Naomi's husband. So it says the man of Naomi. So, Vayita Kerem, he planted a vineyard. Keshenichnas lateva, right? When he originally went into the ark, Hichnis imo zmorot, he took with him shoots. Vayichure te'enim, and it looks like, and forgive me, I need a translation of this, but we're talking te'enim, a te'ena is a fig, so it's something regarding figs. So probably fig sprouts or something like that. This is a word I'm going to need to double check and see what it is. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry. Okay. That's, okay. So we will make sure I look that up next time. And so I'm going to stop the share here. And any thoughts, any comments on what we've done so far?
Uh, the question is, what what happens on those animals in the ark? A lion would eat a lamb. How would they protect it that way?
Right. So it's a good question. I think it comes up that there are possible solutions. First of all, remember, we could go even if we're going to ask that question, we could certainly ask another question, which is, how was Noah able safely to include all these very dangerous animals, and put them in close proximity into the ark? So, again, this is a story. It's a narrative. I think there's a danger in trying to take it too literally. We can come up with explanations. We could come up with natural explanations and say, he put them in cages so that they wouldn't, there were compartments. He made compartments, etc. We could say that. We could say the whole thing is so miraculous that God is capable of, setting up things and working with these animals in such a way that they wouldn't destroy one another, that these are all things within God's power. But I think actually it's really not the point of the story. And I don't believe it is. And I think the real issue has to do with our relationship to the earth and to the creatures around us and how we want to view our lives, how we want to understand our lives. So, those are certainly legitimate questions, but that's if you're moving away from the literary element of the story. And it's not to say that in some sense or another, these things might have happened. But I'll be honest with you, I think it has to do more with understanding the world as being an arc in a way, and talking about the degree to which, that the Torah wants us to understand the responsibility that we have as human beings to the rest of creation. We're in a position, we know nowadays in particular, we're in a position to destroy this world ourselves. We can. We're very capable of destruction. We know that we've had an effect on nature. The animals that are no longer in existence because of human behavior. And I think that's the point of the story. Has really to do with an important message to us as human beings, etc. So I'm going to stop the recording with that.